I think we're good. So,
Okay, so I should interject here. So every time somebody uses a microphone, so right now, this is good. But as soon as someone uses a microphone.
Too loud.
So. I'm gonna
the
turn,
sound is not coming through, is what someone said online.
is it only me to turn around? Add headphones maybe?
It's not recognizing the audio on here when people are speaking.
Alright, so we've got the camera turned way down audio. I'm not sure how much more I can turn this box.
Thought we had it.
Let's try it out.
Try talking that set.
Try again.
This one. Sure.
Sound get from these to that.
I thought it was a wired one.
Yeah, I can put a wired microphone.
I think that's, is it? Is
We did
that what
last
Sun does? Yeah.
Okay, but their microphones go directly to it or very close to it. These go into these boxes. That they're very inexpensive. Sure, I'm not sure what else I can get, but here's that. On the right channel.
I can't hear more. I'm on North William Street and I am on the NPA steering committee here.
Richard Hilliard, High Grove Court.
Gretchen Platt, North Street.
This part of the Old East End.
Carter Newbeezer, Riverside Ave, Ward 1 City Councilor.
Catherine Verman, North Street.
Angie Chapels Hokel, North Prospect Street.
Karen Long, Henry Street.
Jonathan Chapels, North Prospect Street, the steering committee.
Carol Livingston on the steering committee. I'm Calarco Court.
Gary Golden, I'm also over by Shemaska Park and Ward 1 School Commissioner.
Kathy Elwell, Ward 1, North Prospect.
NPA steering committee.
Right here. Or I can just. Okay, perfect.
It's not. Okay.
Just keep your regular-
Okay.
If you want me to report,
I'll speak very loud if you'd like me to.
yeah. and that's- We're just gonna have to find somebody that knows how to put all this together.
Okay, all right. My name is CJ Knudsen from the Vermont Lake Monsters. Thank you guys so much for having me here. Thank you so much for the delicious dinner. That was outstanding and quite a nice surprise. I'm here today to talk about the upcoming baseball season for Vermont Lake Monsters. 2025 season will mark our 31st season in baseball centennial. I have some schedules, maybe you can help pass them out. We kick off our home season on Saturday, May 31st at 3:05. And if we have decent weather, then we could draw our 3 millionth fan in franchise history. So 3 million people that have come to Centennial. And Centennial, as you guys know, is one of the oldest ballparks in the world. 119 years old. The first game was in 1906. So this will be our 5th year in the Futures League, which is a collegiate wooden bat league, which is a little different from when we were a minor league baseball team with the A's, the Nationals, and the Expos. All the guys that play for us are in college from all across the country. And we have a handful of local guys. We have local guys from Vermont. It's the best baseball players in the world. And they're coming here to play their college baseball in front of hopefully about 100,000 people this summer. So, and we'll have 35 home games kicking off in May. Then we wrap up May 9th. So, kind of the stat that we're most proud of since we relaunched after COVID. The Futures League. August 9th. We wrap up. Sorry, we wrap up August 9th. And hopefully we make the playoffs. And we make the playoffs, we go a week longer. So one of the stats that we're most proud of is what we've been able to give back to the community since we relaunched after COVID in goods and services and monetary donations back to the state of Vermont, over $270,000 to the local community. So we're really excited to be here. It's been unbelievable since joining the Futures League. And really appreciate everyone's support here, for our season. Some things to make you guys aware of, we plan on doing 3 fireworks again, as we have in the past. Those will take place. Let me get my glasses down here. The first one will take place on Saturday, June 21st. Second one will be on Friday, July 18th. And the last one will actually be on 802 night, which is a Vermont night, on August 2nd. We continue to do some great promotions. Every Wednesday is free at the ballpark. So if your children 12 and under, they come to the ballpark and they get that voucher for a hot dog, bag of chips, and a bottle of water. Last year, we started a pilot program with Fletcher Free Library in Burlington, it's a tongue twister, where if you have a library card, you can show your library card and check out 6 tickets to a Lake Monsters game, so you get into the ballpark. It's great. So if you come on a Wednesday and use your library card, then you can enjoy a beautiful night out. That pilot program has been so successful, 3 other libraries across the state have picked up on it as well. So hopefully it'll go statewide, and everyone can come to a game if they have a library card. So some other exciting stuff for us is we have 15 games televised statewide on WYCI, which is WCX sister station. So people are coming in from all across the state of Vermont to any questions?
What's the seating capacity in there for some?
4,415.
And so how many fans do you get on an average game?
Average game about 2,600 fans a night. Yeah. When we do our 25-cent hot dog nights and we do our fireworks nights, they usually sell out, so we're at full capacity. On a random, Thursday, we might be, 3,000 fans. It's still $6 for a kid to come to the ballpark. So we want to keep it super affordable for everybody to enjoy a night out, or use a library card to get them for free.
So where do people park and how much does parking cost?
Parking's $5. They can take a free shuttle from Gutterson Fieldhouse parking lot. They can also park at Trinity, which is also free. Or if they want to park inside the stadium, which is very limited, unfortunately, that's $5. Yeah.
So Trinity is free?
Trinity's free. Yeah. Yeah, you park there and then walk across. And the shuttle buses are free as well.
Just to make sure I heard right, every Wednesday is free to get a library card, I'm about to fix my partner.
Sure, yeah, every Wednesday's kids eat free, and then if you have a library card, you can come to any game, and you can get up to 6 tickets for the season. So for example, if you have a library card, you can use that card once to get up to 6 tickets for free.
You have to go to the library to get the tickets and then bring them to the.
Yeah, you go to the library to get the library pass from the library.
You have to go to the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want you to go to the library, so. And all of our players are, we constantly have our players out in the community. They're all college baseball players, and we love to have them read to kids, and they continue to do that.
So we heard a rumor that Miles Carr's playing for the team, is that right?
The Miles Carr played for the team.
Miles.
Yeah, Miles is playing for the team, which is Galen Carr's son. Which you guys might know Galen, and he's gonna be playing on our roster, and that's one of the great things about the Collegiate Wood Bat League is there's local connections here. I mean, we have players from Colchester, South Burlington, last year from Salisbury, so Middlebury area. This year we won from Mount Mansfield, from Jericho, and they kind of play for us, and then maybe get seen by Major League Baseball players or by scouts, and then hopefully get drafted and sign. You know, we had one of our catchers played for us a couple years ago, Ethan Anderson, went to University of Virginia. He signed for $2 million with the Warriors. So it's great baseball, and these guys start their careers right here. And the baseball is better than when it was minor league baseball. It's no longer minor league baseball. Yeah, it's collegiate wooden bat league. So it's all the guys are in college and they play with wooden bats.
So just to clarify the library thing, you go on Wednesday, well, maybe everyone else understands. You get 6 passes on Wednesday to go to any game, not that Wednesday night game.
You can, as long as you have the library card, you can show it at the participating libraries like Fletcher Parade, and then you get up to 6 tickets during the season for any game that you choose. Doesn't need to be.
It doesn't have to be that Wednesday, okay.
The Wednesday is the kids eat free.
Wednesday's kids eat free.
Separate from the
Separate.
library.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but if you team them up, and it's a totally free night on the ball party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things are going very well. You know, we employ about 125 people during the summer. Usually it's 14, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kids. It's their first job, and they come out to the ballpark and learn to work a little bit and interact with fans and work on their customer service skills and have a great time out. We're also having a wedding at the ballpark in September, so we're getting married. So that'll be around September 16th. So it's it's not me, Richard. But and we're hosting the high school state championships. We've done that for a number of years. That's kind of the big thrill for schools coming from all across the state. That'll be June 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Thank you for all your work, CJ, and connection with us and your commitment.
Thank you. Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I love being here. You know, I was as I mentioned, I'm you know born in born in New York, but grew up in Giltino, Vermont, and went to Campbell Sutton Middle School, and Carol was one of my teachers, and she was my English teacher. And actually, on a personal note, I submitted 3 poems to the city of Rutland last month, and they were selected, so they were displayed on storefronts in Rutland. So thank you, Carol, for your instruction. Yeah. I love being here, and I played at Centennial Field as a high school baseball player, so to be here to kind of maintain it and help you steward of it, it's pretty awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Poems.
I'll send them to Carol. Hopefully she can be an A, I'm not sure. She is. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate the support. Love to see you guys at the ballpark, and hopefully it's a nice dry summer, at least on Lake Monster games. Thanks. Thank you so much.
That was it was really an incredible experience.
Yeah.
You want me to mic and not? Project?
You just
Volume down to the cameras. Okay, because you can't use that microphone. with this.
Maybe, yeah.
All right.
You can come and listen to the microphone.
I have two announcements. One has to do with our NPA budget. And we spend most of our budget on food and on the room and board. And that covers most everything we spend our money on this year. We have to invoice all of our purchases by the end of this month, just because of June and closeouts and so forth. We have about $1,000 left. And what we're interested in doing is, and seeking approval of the NPA from, would be to spend some of the money on something like a sound system that will work. Okay, to be named later, but it will have an amplified speaker. We have our 4 wireless mics. We have some magic boxes over there, and somehow or other it's all going to work out. So we'd like to spend some money on that. And what we've done in past years is that we have actually made a donation to Front Porch Forum and made a donation to Town Meeting TV, because the money is supposed to be used for outreach. And this is how we do almost all of our outreach at this point. So as I said, we have about $1,000. We haven't figured out how much everything will cost, but if there's consensus that it's okay for us to spend money on those 3 things, to use up this money, then we'll go forward. So I guess I want to make a motion that we spend up to $1,000 somewhere divided between a sound system and donations to our communications people, Front Porch Forum and Town Meeting TV.
I second.
Is there discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move forward with that. The other thing is, I think it's pretty quick. Carter and I presented at Ward 6 last week before. And one of the other guests at the meeting was from Front Porch Forum, Susanna Caress. And the conversation kind of came around to 1 East. And so I have some questions for folks in this room who used to be part of the ONE East Forum. Can I just see a show of hands of how many people in the room were ONE East? So it's like 1, 2. Well, 1 East was the forum. It was the name of our. It was the name of the forum. It was largely. So
you're in 1 East or Centennial in this room, right?
That's what it is. Is that it was 1 East or Centennial. When we were with 8, we also had Town Department. But the Front Porch Forum that we host on used to be called 1 East. Now it's called the Old North End. Okay, so I want to ask, this is a struggle, okay? And it doesn't count for anything. It's mostly my curiosity because of conversation. The first question is, do you prefer the current ONE neighborhood or the old 1 East neighborhood? How many prefer the current expanded ONE neighborhood?
Nice, good question. There was still always a Centennial, right? So
There isn't once, there wasn't. 1 East was like the east end of, it was 1 East, 1 Central, and 1 West, and they kind of walked right down. I think kind of Lewis and North, and it just kind of walked down. Way down. People prefer the way it is right now. Big ONE neighborhood.
See, these.
Because I need to know about the chickens on.
Into those little boxes, the little boxes go into the big stuff.
About the differences.
Okay, and usually that's fine,
Just remind
but
us.
now
Well,
you're trying to get me to
I'm
my
trying not to
So I see
to influence the jury. That's, I mean, my goal is to really get a sense, I mean, if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, that's a great answer.
the sound, these are not gonna come out of here unless there's
but
some connection.
1 East used to be a much more smaller community, a smaller neighborhood. Now, the buses are combined with the center and the west.
This
The old North East, old North End comprises everything pretty much.
So you got too much.
I don't think it's College Street, it is College Street, it's at least Pearl Street,
It wasn't this.
down to the river, down to the way. That's what you'll see now. So when you see, so an example would be, it used to be that there would be, every day you get half a dozen posts. Now you get half a dozen posts. If you read the headlines, it's half a dozen posts plus 7 more. And, you know, you read the first half dozen and then 7.
So
Yes.
also for South Union and downtown, they've also seemed to combine that with.
There were 22 neighborhoods. They merged them into 7.
And it works.
So
Here,
the new north end
stuff
is now
because
one.
it's
They used to be, I don't know,
But if you
half a dozen in the new north end. and now it's just one. So they consolidated the city
just-
and.
You're isolated.
And
You're completely isolated because we have a whole system that might go
I see.
here to the mixer.
Yeah, they have individual.
Our mixers.
community every post.
Went that way.
I'm not an expert, so I can't say. I just recommend that this, you send this down and in the morning, you just call
they
them.
range from about 4,000
Who knows? how
members to
to
about
do this.
8,000. Oh, actually, it's
And they're
600,
gonna
maybe
tell
10.
you by
5, 600,
noon,
down below that, 25.
if they think it's gonna work.
So Peter, you still have a question?
And they'll play. See, we would never come there without testing this ahead. See, our organization never would have done this. It would have all been tested beforehand. So this was like, you know. And see, I had no other way of, see, I had no other options. But maybe your idea of.
Right.
See, this has to go to the boxes. That absolutely has to happen.
What does?
This microphone has to go
To those black boxes.
to the boxes.
Yeah, but we could plug the black
Okay.
box into here and then that was what I was originally. thinking of the screen.
Well, that's a good idea.
It is, you know, whether there's a better alignment for currently is today.
So that would give you one, it might give you one.
Can't do the voices today.
That's definitely not gonna give you.
There's 2 cords that come out.
Was the most subscribed.
Right, so there's two, so there's 8 channels,
Yep.
2 and 2, so that takes up half the mixer.
I'll throw the cards over and say, the smoke and heat neighborhood is the second largest neighborhood.
You could try splitting it here,
It's not
you could try
quite as
putting a
large.
splitter and getting 2.
So it's a very, very big
Because
neighborhood.
there's already 2 inputs.
Membership, subscribers.
The one we were at.
No, this one.
Oh, one, and it just.
So we could have one over here and then like.
I made 71 that one. Yeah, one is not-
Well, like I say, you guys can do whatever you
So
want,
the question, the first question is,
this is not
for
working.
the
So
current.
I suggest you send that back with me, and
You have a question?
they'll,
I just
by,
wanted to
by tomorrow afternoon, they should give you an idea,
say that if we are going
How it
to
would
do
work.
stuff
so then they
that
tell me
talks to the city
how to do it.
and they are to listen to us,
And
then it should
then
be
we can,
the voting group that we are
Sure,
talking
I'll
to
close
them.
it.
So
okay, so
1 and 8
what time
should
of day
be
are you?
together as a,
Receive that,
in order, you know, it just seems
After school.
ridiculous not,
okay, like
if
4
if
o'clock,
we're really
Yep.
mirroring the city,
Okay.
but in our neighborhood. then
that's what I
it should be
suggest,
along
let the
those
professionals
voting boards.
not.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's
Figure
quite
out
a
the
valid
best way to
approach. The front.
Because it's not the same as person, we keep saying it's, oh, it's just, oh, that's like. no,
That, you know,
that's
that
not
their
the same.
goal is not necessarily political.
Because we don't have it plugged in your box.
So-
If we don't have it plugged into your box, then it is.
House
the same.
district, Senate.
Yeah, if you're just using your mic,
That's true too.
It's not political, because I think people hear you.
And we're one, or O and E is not connected to the tenant, for example.
How many people are happy with the current size of Front Porch Forum?
Of our Old North End.
I like it. I love knowing about what's going on. I don't do it for politics. I do it for the feeling of neighborhood.
Okay. No, that's
And I
fine.
like knowing about the chicken on Peru Street. I like knowing that, you know, I don't know. So it doesn't bother me that,
That's totally legitimate.
and I skip posts, you know, I don't read all of it.
I belong to two, sometimes I don't end here if we own a property on Nash Place, and I like how it's smaller and you don't have to like. You can see them all right in the headline versus the one ours here. You see 6 and then, like you said, there's 7 more posts that I didn't get to and it gets lost. It gets lost.
So the other half of the question would be, how many people are not happy with the current size? The current size of our current O&E neighborhood.
See, Peter, you shouldn't be voting.
Oh, I shouldn't.
Oh, yeah, because Peter's not in sync. Not in it.
I'm in both.
The only thing I really want is.
But I'm not.
I think other people are.
Oh, because they're in.
Yeah. So
Just tell me how.
Now.
Ange.
May I say something?
Sure.
Some of us are very interested.
No.
Hey, y'all, I just want to be aware that the only sound that people can hear online is coming from that microphone. So I would probably suggest like not too many side conversations because people online can like barely hear. Just like,
So should we go up there to this?
no, you don't have to. I'm just saying like maybe side conversations so it's not so muffled so people can hear clearly.
Okay, so why don't you talk with this? And whenever anybody else wants to say.
Yes.
Yes. I want to say that some of us through time have been interested in how Front Porch Forum, which I like very much, but how Front Porch Forum organized us all and how they made those choices. And maybe they didn't want to make political choices. I mean, choices to put each of us in our districts. But I think more to the point of what I want to say tonight is that some of us have done some research on what has happened through time and how big Front Porch Forums neighborhoods are all over Burlington. And because I'm in this really big neighborhood, I just feel like there's so many people who are posting, I have no idea where they live. And I will look for their cat, but I don't know where their street is. And I like being in touch with my neighbors, but I'm afraid that there are a lot of people who aren't aware of the fact that it changed so radically. And now the one that we live in is the second biggest in the state. And it just seems like that's a big deal for one neighborhood of Burlington, Vermont. And that's my opinion.
You don't have. I'll go to the third question just in the interest of time. But thank you. I think I got the input that I can share. I can share with Front Porch Forum, and at least I know we did a struggle. Not very many people, but it's a struggle nonetheless. Thank you for the time, Sam.
Speak up. Just a time to keep moving. It's
especially if that's the time as things come to mind and we want, that will be a good time. Sorry, Sam.
Worse.
Which side we stand? Or we get
Sit here and you just hold us.
Okay, so my question is over where the projector is. Even.
Great, thanks. So Gary Golden, Ward 1 Commissioner. I don't think there's a lot on the local level. Most of it is what's happening at the state as the,
One conversation, I think, I'm sorry.
most of it is what's happening at state as the education bill funding bill moves through the Senate. The House 454 was handed over to the Senate probably within the last month to education committee with an interesting makeup, mostly fairly conservative or a little biased toward private schools. And I'm basing that on not my personal, but feedback from articles and other legislators. And because of that, the bill that's come out is very friendly toward private schools, not therapeutic or specialized schools. This really still slanted toward the weird structure that Vermont has with, I think it's down to 10 or 11 private academies that accept public money and students. The House bill required that for a school to still receive money from the state, from public funding, those schools needed to have 50% of their school population be publicly funded by the end of this legislative year. That was changed. I have to look at the new bill. It was changed at one point down to 25%. Helps when the Senate committee chair is a former board chair for one of those private academies. Imagine. So thank you, Philip Baruth. So it's more slanted toward private and seems like another step down the road toward privatizing education in Vermont. And I think many behind the scenes agree that that's the case. It's not just Gary kind of saying. So that's where we are. It's part of it's in the finance committee now to look at the numbers. From a distance, I'll say that the House, okay, I'll go even farther back. There were no savings in Governor Scott's plan. Minimal. And they were all because of this mega district here around Burlington. And even then it was 5 or 6 years down the road, assuming that the cuts that they made had any sort of half-life, which they weren't. You know, most of the districts in the state have pretty appropriately staffed administrative offices. Ours has grown a lot since when I worked in the district, but you know, we added a lot of the diversity inclusion efforts. That's probably 10 or 12 people, staff members. And then there, you know, as curricula has gotten a little more complicated and as reporting out has gotten more complicated, staff was added. So, you know, I've kind of made peace with that growth. But I think as far as the state, the savings that were there have been gotten. So now we're fighting to keep what we've gotten from weighted pupil. That's the worry, because the original Senate bill that was worded didn't even include weighting for English learner students. And that's been somewhat corrected, but only if the numbers put forth by one of the consultants are honored. So that's I think where the state is, but you may have more.
Yeah, I believe that in the most recent bill, the weights were adjusted so that Burlington would be slated to receive less overall funding than it had in the past year. And so there's some discussion about how to address that, which would be problematic for our district as well. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. There, in the most recent bill, the weights were adjusted downward so that Burlington would benefit less from the state appropriations for that.
Yeah. At one point, it was equivalent to 170 teacher positions. That has been adjusted, but it's still going to be a pretty stark change when that bill is passed.
Yeah.
Or give my, I mean, is Martine still on the education committee? I thought she
Why?
was not.
No, is she, I thought she was.
Yeah.
Okay, she's not.
So we have no one from Burlington on the education
Yeah.
committee. What the?
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
none. So it's, and never mind. So why don't we open for questions? That might be the
Sure.
way to go.
Yeah.
And one thing that will actually Carter will should be aware of. I mean, I made a statement back within the last year about the universal funding for lunch, and that I was hoping it would be kind of changed some, and it was really because the federal government guarantees free and reduced lunch for students. It was the difference between that amount and what it cost schools to feed everyone that was covered from the education fund, which I thought was not the place to pull the money from. It was easy, it was feel good. It needed to be discussed more because most of those families, well, we've had discussion even at the board. A lot of us, our kids wouldn't, wouldn't have needed to be free. So it seemed like it was easier. I think the days of the stigma of kids getting a different color plate or getting a different meal or not getting the meal, address that. Fund, that no kid has to get a peanut butter sandwich because they're overdue.
Mm-hmm.
I got that. And I saw that when I worked, multiple schools. But there's a way to fund that without the large omnibus idea. That funding goes away with 454 or in the state. It's starting from scratch for all those things that were funded through the ed fund. So after school is affected, universal lunch is affected, all that goes away because it's not built into either of the laws. So just to warn you that that's out there. And, we've already lost farm to school funding from the feds. So now it's not locally sourced, or there's no move to make it locally sourced. I think Burlington was doing that before the bill was passed and will continue. But for the state, farmers relied on that money and now that's gone.
Yeah.
So we're in the flux that I think I probably have talked way too much about in the past, that, we're looking at probably some dire times coming, depending on how Medicaid and Medicare survives this new great big beautiful bill, as they're calling it. That's working its way through the House for tax bill.
Yeah. And just because you weren't aware, Medicaid is sort of a stopgap funding for special education services that sometimes if a school district needs additional resources to cover for services that can't be covered by the school budget, Medicaid can be served as the payer to step in for that. So if Medicaid gets cut, then the services available for kids who need or want special education also gets hurt.
Sorry.
Questions?
Please. Okay, Carter, I did cut you off. Go ahead. Oh.
Less of a question, more of a comment, so I'll try to be brief. Just more of a comment, so I'll try to be brief and less of a question, but I think is very relevant. Been having conversations with some of the state reps and just folks in the state house, and my day job in part is related to what's going on in the state house right now. I'm hoping, although it's gone nowhere, there's been some conversation here and there of as federal tax cuts come in for folks who don't need it, we can essentially level their tax on the state side to backfill some funding and cover some of the cuts that were experienced from the federal level. The other piece of this that's been very frustrating that I've tried to communicate, and I think a number of unions have tried to communicate, is that one of the biggest drivers of our big spike in property taxes that sort of sparked this whole conversation is healthcare costs. It's healthcare costs. And there's two drivers in Vermont specifically, were one of the worst in terms of prices on us. It is how much the hospital charges for services, how much they bill insurance companies and Medicare and Medicaid particularly Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is about to go under because they're going to be insolvent soon, and how much we're getting charged on the pharmaceutical from the pharmaceutical companies. We are the worst state if you look at all the metrics per, adjusted for population, all that good stuff on that front. And so my frustration has been that we're not, and I guess I'm saying this to say, in whatever role that the school board has in advocating for this stuff, we've just ignored that piece. There's been bills introduced, I think, they haven't gone anywhere. It doesn't seem like, generally speaking, there's the backbone in the legislature to do that. And certainly there's not an ally in the governor to do that. Because there are, reference-based pricing. It's not my ideal solution to healthcare, but it would at least cap some costs and tie that to what they charge and what they bill Medicare. Yeah, and this has been my fear. I was kind of like, I got false hope for a second. I was like, oh, the weights don't look that bad, blah, blah. But where we're ending up in terms of consolidation and weighting formula, I'm worried is going to be rough for us. But I'll stop ranting. Thanks.
Thank you. For the legislative process, it still has to go back to conference committee. So that's our only hope, that there will be some way that we can, if you're interested in public education surviving, to get some input there. Then it's going to be whether it's just the irony that both of the House and Senate leaders are from Burlington, and yet we're just underrepresented in these. So hopefully our House leader will actually appoint some people that will defend public education as part of the conference committee.
Yeah.
And if you want to reach out to her, that would be great. So, I mean, that's where we are. It's hard. The distinction, I mean, I'll be quick. The distinction that kills me is that there's no kind of division of why education costs are expensive, other than some of those drivers, like Carter was saying. We subsidize small schools as a state out of proportion to the per student stipend that's part of the structure, because they can't survive on that money. For them to survive, there's also another chunk of money awarded to them, and that's not talked about. Most of the districts, when it comes just to education itself, are in line with other states. It's that money to keep those, the school dies, the village dies. I mean, that really is the math. Church dies, then usually the country store goes first. But the school is also where they're getting health services. It's where they're getting dental services. It's where they're getting mental health services. It's the last hub standing. And that's not taken into consideration as part of that. So, soapbox, sorry, thank you.
I have an online question.
Sure. And that'll be our last problem.
It says, how did Vermont move away from public education being a priority? I know other parts of the country are not always concerned, but it's been a value here.
I've been in the state for 13 years. I don't know that I have a long enough history there to comment on that. I think it's just been, if I had to guess, I would guess it's, I think I would go back to what Gary suggested about sort of the size of some of the school districts in some areas. Yeah, I think that it's become really challenging to support very small school districts, because a school district has both the required minimums for staffing of teachers, then a central office to oversee those school districts, and it sort of compounds the cost substantially when you have a small number of students. There are some schools that have, about 40 or 50 kids in the entire building, and that's how many kids are in the first grade at Edmonds. And those districts still require a principal, assistant principal, counseling staff, and central office staff to oversee them. And so it creates a real challenge.
Sure. I'll be quick. We actually are one of the last remaining states that honors public ed. If you look at any media out there, shows, whatever, in my experience from after desegregation, the affluent whites went to private schools. They created their own districts, church schools, private schools. That's the norm just about everywhere other than the Northeast. So we're still sort of holding on, but I would go back to Governor Scott. He had a choice when he appointed a education secretary. Could have gone to a state that had grappled with funding public education. Maine's like 10, 15 years in front of us, grappling with us, making the same decisions that we're trying to make. He could have gone to somebody like that, other states, small states that are large but small populations. No, he chose to get a charter school administrator. That's, I think, his vision. So it's really just us trying to hold on. It's the cat on the screen door hanging in there. That's sort of where we are with public education in Vermont, but we're trying to hold on. I think we probably.
All right, we gotta move on.
Thank you all.
Counselor updates.
Shall we have 20 minutes? Yeah. Well, hey, everybody. How are you? Allie is at the budget meeting tonight. So I'm covering NPA. She's covering budget, and we'll trade some notes. I want to focus on the budget and walk through my understanding of it, where I'm at with it, and sort of what the next month looks like in terms of process and some of the priorities I have within it. I'll just say this has been like one of my least favorite experiences, certainly as a counselor so far. And I think in my 8 or 9 years now of being involved in Burlington politics, it's just very difficult. So I want to walk through a few things. First, I want to start with the premise of, do we need to cut positions? Because that's really, and cut some programming, because I think that's one of the more impactful pieces. And I think the answer is yes. The reality is, over the last 10 years or so, the way that we have balanced budgets is not to look at, have real scrutiny of sort of operational efficiency. And when I say that, it sounds like corporate-y. But when I say operational efficiency, I mean, we have a goal, we create some city program to fill a need, and then we don't look at it again. There's never been consistency in reviewing those as time goes on. And are those still needs? Is the program working? Is it sort of filling the need that we need it to, or that the intent was? And there's a number I can speak to. And does this make sense, or is there other existing resources with the state, nonprofit partners, federal partners that are already filling that need? And so a good example of this, I think, and as it relates to the budget, is the core program at the Heinenberg Center. Very important program, right? Very good program that I agree with, and that my first thought coming in as a city councilor was not, I'm going to go vote for a budget that cuts that. But that program is actually a really good example of what I'm talking about. We grant $80,000 to the Heinenberg Center every year that fills very similar needs and runs a similar program for a much larger population of seniors. The city spends 3 full-time staff equivalents to staff that programming, on top of paying facilities and other materials. And we serve 12 people. And so we can't afford to do that anymore. And I would say, I'd sort of be more open to not having this conversation, frankly. if the reality wasn't every year, instead of looking at things like that and making a hard decision about it or figuring out an alternative that made more sense, we have just raised property taxes. And so just FY23, FY24, FY25, 6%, 6%, 11%. That, to put that in context, because I didn't fully appreciate it until I heard it. That's $1,000 for the average house. The average house, $500,000 in Burlington, sale price right now. If you own a $500,000 house, it's $1,000 in 3 years, just on your municipal side of the tax bill. Not to mention the state property taxes increases, which have been, as folks know, in the double digits over that time period. So I think we're getting to the point where, you know, to avoid having this conversation, we used millions of dollars in federal money throughout COVID, throughout the Biden administration, essentially, with IRA funds and with COVID money. We grew city government in the last 10 years by about 100 positions. 37 of them were funded with one-time funds. So that's the reality we're facing. And I think the approach that I'm hearing from the mayor, and it's one that I agree with, is we need to take an inventory of everything we do, everything every department does, every service we provide, cost it out, see what it's costing us, see, you know, sort of the metrics of who's doing what, what's the actual impact, are there other providers? And the mayor sort of set forward a criteria that she's shared publicly, and then evaluate row by row everything we do as a city. And sort of, I don't agree, I'll just say, and these are part of ongoing conversations I'm going to have. I don't agree with every decision that's been made, but I think any of the decisions of like, where do you cut, what positions, what programming are going to be painful. And so we need to keep having a conversation as a community about what those are, and good people can disagree about what those things should be, and how you go about that. But that is just, I think, the reality, the unfortunate reality that I have to now share with all of you. The reason that I think avoiding tax increases is so important, because I'm a big proponent, as I just mentioned, of raising taxes on folks who who can afford it. If you look at, you know, what the sort of how much folks are paying at the low end of the spectrum in taxes versus, you know, on the whole, when you look at local, state, federal, versus those with money, those with money are doing pretty well in the grand scheme of things. They will tell you they're not doing well and everything's tight, but they're doing pretty well, historically speaking. But we don't have a mechanism. We fund our general fund with property taxes, as we all know. We don't have a mechanism by which we can really adjust for how much folks are making. So we can't adjust for Sharon, who's on a fixed income, who said multiple times she's worried about getting priced out of the city. We just don't have it in charter. That work to get that authority is happening. And we will, I'm sure, have charter changes going to the state legislature in the next year, through the mayor's tax fairness working group. And that's going to be a big political fight. And I don't know if we're going to win it, but we at least need to put up that fight, because we need that ability to be able to fund what I think everybody in this room would agree are important services and functions of city government. But we need to be able to do it in a fair way that doesn't leave us in a position where the only young families who can move in have remote jobs from California and can buy a $850,000 single family. I mean, that's really the reality of a lot of the new folks moving in. It's not to blame them, or, you know, I mean, if I was making a bunch of money, I would buy a nice house too. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful community. We all live here and we love it. And there's a reason people want to live here. But there's also something to be said for the importance of economic diversity, and having a city of where different folks can afford to live. So I know I'm ranting a little bit. That's my job in this section, though. That's sort of the picture that I see and the most accurate descriptor of where I think we are financially as a city. And I can talk more about different levers and people can follow up with me for a coffee or something, but every lever you can think of, lowering the, for example, and I was just saying this to Dave, lowering the unassigned fund balance. We should probably be closer to 15-20%. We're in the 5 to 15% range, which is a decision that's been made in recent memory. So all these different mechanisms that you could use to prevent having to have this conversation and go through this exercise have been pulled. So anyway, so that's the reality that I'm seeing, and I'm happy to be wrong on that. I, thought it would be a rosier picture, but so the main sort of piece here that there's two really important consolidations of city function that I wanted to highlight. One is one that I agree with and that I've talked about before and advocated for. We've had an IT department that serves 17 out of the 18 city departments with whatever, IT services. The police department has had their own IT department with not really a good reason as to why. And so I think moving that together, we found savings and I think makes good sense, operationally speaking. CEDO and BWD is the other sort of first of potentially other mergers of city departments in the next few years. This is also one that I've advocated for. BWD just was created in 2022 and sort of pulled, and I thought it was a mistake then, and I've talked about it being a mistake since. It took the core functions of workforce development and economic development, business and economic development, out of CEDO, which is core to what CEDO was founded in the first place, and to the point where you had some workforce development happening for early childhood ed, I think, through BWD, and then you had workforce development happening for weatherization, which is something that I've been involved with over the years, happening through CEDO, and then both those department heads are applying for the same money from the feds and competing for the same grants. So there's been a lack of operational clarity in that sense, and I think as a consequence of that, or as a natural consequence, we've spent more than we need to get the same thing done. So there's some examples of I think that are worth highlighting, and I welcome feedback on, but I obviously have an opinion on. The pieces that I am struggling with still, and I'm still trying to get some clarity here from the administration, is we've never been through a RIF process, and I know the mayor, and I know her to be an incredibly competent, good person. I think some of the manner in which we let folks off, RIFed folks, because it's not firing folks, actually, it's a difference there. The manner in which we've RIFed some positions and went about that, I've been trying to seek more understanding of why it was done. Oh, we got a spill. Wanting some clarity and having a bunch of one-to-one conversation as to why, how that's played out, and what are ways that we can not so what are some learnings that we can get under our belt as a city? Because that's been one point of frustration for me, and that's feedback I've given and I'll give over the next month. I'm trying to think what else is important to mention here, and I want to open it up for questions because I don't want to rant too much and run out of time. The last thing I'll say is yeah, there's, I'll leave that piece there. I'll say the mayor announced today that Kara Answari, who was the director of business workforce development, is going to lead sort of like CETO 2.0 as the department head. Kara's very accomplished, competent professional and has done very, very good work in her role. I am going to keep having more conversations, and it's nothing to do with Kara, frankly. I wanted to see a different choice as the director of CETO. And so, you know, at the same time, I think it is any mayor's prerogative. And in fact, it's important that the mayor be able to surround themselves with the team that they think that is going to most effectively, you know, carry out a policy agenda that they got elected to carry out. So that's the nature of political appointments. So anyway, that's where I am. I wanted to share it with all of you because I think it's an important conversation, and then take some feedback. Oh yeah, sorry.
I just wanted to ask about Parks and Rec. When I was at city council meeting, there were three of them, I guess, that got up. And if we're getting rid of recreation, what are our kids doing this summer and in the after school times? Because they run an awful lot of programs. And I've known two of those three since I came here and opened the youth center. And I was really kind of taken aback but I didn't fully get from her, is there something else in place, or are we just doing away with that?
Can I do a couple questions and then I can answer them?
So you want to hear all the questions?
Just because we have to do the mic thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Just
So thank you for the explanation. And I think the best one was about 3 full-time employees serving 12 seniors. And those 12 seniors are very worthy, but it's just, in my mind, when people have talked about what's wrong in Burlington, it's been public safety and high taxes. So this is what I think the whole community wants, but it's going to be a hard thing to do. And I just remember when my son went to high school, and he's like 37 or 38 now, they had to cut the Chinese language program because there were like 7 kids. And yes, it was hard for those 7 kids, and we think we should be, you know, teaching Chinese. But I think that you and with the mayor are doing the right thing, because where the problem was when we hired 37 employees with just one-time funds, those people should have been told this is a 1-year position. And then, and about 5 years ago, I was at a Ward 6 meeting, and somebody told me that we had hired 98 people, new full-time employees in the city of Burlington, and I didn't know that. And then now it's all coming out that that's where the problem is. We hired, you know, the city, the councilors approved it, whatever. We hired, I think it's up to 116 people, they said, over those 10 years. And that, it's a hard thing, but unless everybody agrees we want to raise our taxes, then we have to cut positions. And I know the schools, they had to do that rifting, I believe, by April. Carol would know this and stuff, and let people know that they were not going to be teaching the next year. But it's not a fun thing. So anyway.
Catherine.
And I'm just writing down, taking notes.
Okay, and then you can answer. Okay.
What I want to say is not so much a questioning or criticism of the cuts, but how it took place. And I think in this time that we live in now, that we need to be so conscious and meticulous about not creating more ill will in the world. And there was ill will that was created in this process. And I would like to know why. I'd like to know what, and I actually, it would be my request that the mayor not only give an explanation, but some sort of acknowledgement of why it was done the way it was done, which it was done in a very cold-hearted way. It was done in a way where there was not recognition of the contribution that these employees have made. And, you know, it was, to me, it's the kind of thing that if Trump or if Governor Scott did it this way, we would be completely up in arms. And I'm confused and I don't understand why this beautiful mayor did it this way.
And I can say being on the side has not been.
Yeah.
What? This past month has not been fun.
Yeah.
My son is on the inside too.
Yeah.
Marta, thanks very much for the bad news, and you talked about all the cuts. What about all the revenue that you're going to get with new initiatives? What about the revenue that you're going to get for managing ordinances that are already on the books, making sure that fines are appropriated in a correct way, make sure that proper enforcement is in place to generate funds. Karen's very generous to talk about the fact that this has been going downhill for 5 years. It hasn't been since COVID. It hasn't. It's been going downhill for 10 years. And the previous administration should take 99% of the responsibility. But having said that, I haven't seen a single initiative from this mayor or this city council in the last 14 months that it's been there, 13 months maybe, that actually does anything to generate funds, does anything to take the onus away from the taxpayer and put it on the people that we're talking about. Not picking up Christmas trees. We're talking about prospectively recycling, things like that. We're talking about the things that make neighborhoods tick. We're doing the wrong thing. Kathy is so right in talking about parks and recreation. I can't believe that it's true. It sounds like an amateurish pantomime, but the very, very thought that Gary Rogers has been let go, I guarantee that in this town, or people who have lived in this town who have had children from anywhere from 4 now to probably about 42 or 43, I bet 50% of those has benefited from the work that Gary Rogers has done, whether as a coach or directing programs. It's absolutely tone deaf ears, absolutely absurd. Having said that, there might be some other reason, but which we don't know. That's the thing, we don't know. So
I'm gonna answer this batch, and these are all good questions. So I'm gonna start. I'll start with Kathy's. I don't have it in front of me, and I can send a follow-up, but it is not that we do not have any programming through Parks and Rec. I want to be clear about that. There are reductions in, no doubt. There's reductions when you look at BCA, Burlington Arts. The number of events we can pull off, both last year and this year, there's reductions, but there's a clear understanding, and I want us all. A mic thing here. That's right. Everybody good? So jump scare. So there is an understanding though that as BCA is another example, Rex is an example, those are there's more benefits than just we had a nice event down in the park that drives the local economy. It gets revenue into the room and meals tax, et cetera, gross receipts, which is important because we know that with what's going on federally, the decrease from traffic from Canada is already hitting us pretty significantly. We expect $1 million drop. We're budgeting for $1 million drop in gross receipts in the upcoming year, largely due to that. Now, to your point, around revenue, I also want to be clear that this is not a revenue, we are raising revenue in this budget. Taxes in 23, I talked a little bit about 23, 24, 25 went up, and I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it was $200 something. I think it was 201. It was 300 something, more in the mid 300s. And then it was 431 last year on the municipal side. If you're using a $500,000 house as the example, this year's increase, because there is going to be an increase, is going to be $35. So scaling that way down. But we absolutely had to raise new revenue. Last budget, we did a 2.5% increase, which was a 12-month sunset on the room and meals on the gross receipts. We are not going to sunset that tax. It's going to continue. But even with not sunsetting it, the total dollars in the till are going to go down significantly, just under $1 million. So there's definitely new revenue. I just want to say, and through some of the bonds on the ballot, the Go bond, et cetera, there will be investment and there's continued investment, which is important because we still need to tackle public safety. We still need to tackle housing, which there is investment there. So I answered yours and yours. I just want to say too, that because my first thought was why, if we created 37 positions, why are those not the ones going? And so that was my first thought when I was looking at the budget.
Released today.
Yeah. No, but
I think that there was a press release that was released today from Emma that explains why the folks that were hired on the one-time funds were not the folks that were hired.
Yeah. And I was going to say, so an example of this is if we took that approach as a blanket rule, CSLs and CSOs were all funded with one-time money. But we know that CSLs and CSOs have proven to be a cost-effective and really important piece of the public safety system. So it's more difficult than just saying, let's look at who was just hired. I do think, again, I'm not going to speak to individual employees because I think that'd be inappropriate as a counselor to do. But there are a number of conversations I want to have on some of those pieces. The last piece here. Yeah. And to your point, Catherine, I'm a labor organizer. I've a long time, pretty staunch labor union supporter. And so I'm struggling with that piece pretty heavily. And I also know that we have folks leading the city who are very good folks, good people with strong values. And so I'm trying to get more understanding, and I've already had a few conversations, and I'm going to get more understanding, hopefully, and provide some strong feedback. Because I think we missed the mark in that respect pretty well. And I'm trying to wrap my head around where was the breakdown, and so we can make sure that is not something that happens in the city. So that piece has been tough, and I mean, any of these things would be painful, but I think there's a couple pieces there that we could have maybe done. And part of that, I know Dave, and I'll go to you, and I'll hand you this. Figuring out I'd love to hear the online question. Figuring out some way to celebrate those folks would be great.
I'm like everybody else, kind of shocked and amazed at how people with the experience, I think there was something like 100 years of experience that just got let go without any form of respect or acknowledgement for the service that they put into the city. And so my question is, how are we going to make this right? And I'm actually looking to the NPA. You know, what can we do here at the NPA to do something that's going to acknowledge all these people that we know? I work personally with Gary on every single winterlude that we've done over the past 5 years. The man is amazing and what he would do and help and support. And so I'm sure everybody has their own stories about how they interact with these folks. I wondered if we can do something to do a resolution, a letter to the mayor, or something that honors what these people have done for the city. I don't know exactly what that can be. I know that I have personal contacts, and besides the people that got let go, Cindy White, who's been the director of parks, is also leaving on retirement. So there's some acknowledgement that I think we've gotten a lot of benefit from these city employees and the services they provided. So I'm definitely open to and working with the steering committee, and in some fashion, can we as a neighborhood let the administration know and let these workers know that we really appreciate what they've done for us.
Yeah, thank you, David. The other piece I missed on giving, and I know I'm running out. Oh, sorry, Lisa. I'll write my thing down here so I don't forget.
Hi, everyone. I'm here because I have a cold. I don't want to defend this, but I think it's pretty standard HR procedure these days to follow the kind of protocols that we were hearing about during the city council meeting. Yeah, I don't agree with it, but I think modern HR kind of advises that you don't give employees advance notice, you walk them out of their job, you don't cut off their access to computers, etc. And it's part of our risk-averse working culture. And again, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, that is accurate, Lisa. The only other thing I'd say is because I do, again, I'm trying to sort of give, as I generally try to, the best sort of accurate picture I can so folks can wrestle with this stuff, is there was a number, and now I'm blanking on some of them off the top of my head here, but there are a number of sort of, from a labor perspective, being a labor organizer, practices that were pursued in this process that were strong and that most employers would not do. And so, for example, getting 60-day healthcare is required with the union contract. In practice, that I think it was 7 folks, because 5 of the union eliminations were, and I should say RIFs, because they're not technically, folks didn't get fired. There's a difference there. But we basically took what was in the union contract for those 7 folks and applied it to anybody else, even non-union positions, which I think was a good thing to do and a good practice. There's a few others, and again, I'm blanking because I'm exhausted, but yeah, I welcome folks to presentations. Like I said, Allie is at one right now over the next number of weeks, which will inform how this budget is formed and give folks a better sense of department by department how we're allocating funds. So I encourage folks to watch those, because that's kind of, I think, the arena, so to speak, that we can sort of continue this conversation and have influence over the process.
I'm just wondering whether people want to continue this conversation. If Carter, you're okay with doing the other thing next month? Because it seems important. It seems like something we don't want to walk away from. And, you know, just suddenly change tunes. So if it's okay with everybody, okay with you, Carter, and me, that next month we do the resolution, we can keep going with this. Does that make sense? I have to just follow on to what Lisa said, having worked at IBM for my career. Layoffs were heartless. RIFs were heartless. I don't think they were any more humane than what happened here. I don't know all the details of what happened here, but it was really awful. And only at the very end of my time there did the leadership start to understand how heartless they were and start to change the process. But for decades, it was just a terrible thing. So this is the nature of it, unfortunately.
I do just want to speak to, because it's not, I don't agree with it, and it's not a sort of like defense or answer. But I also think that it's important context for folks to appreciate that they're like the city of Burlington. We do a lot of things well. I think we have very, very good city employees. I think our government is run, compared to other local governments, like if you took a spectrum on how well it's run, we're toward the higher end. And there are, in my experience so far in the council, there are no processes really written down. There's a lot of people who are really good, and so things move forward in a good way. But you know, I have worked on operations and budgeting stuff in a former job, much smaller budget. It was like $1.5 million, but and much smaller number of employees. But if I look and I've made some of these, you know, I've had some of these conversations in my time in the council so far. Things across the board just need to function better, and the budget and our financial picture is sort of forcing that conversation. But I think, in fairness to the mayor, because I don't think the intent or approach is where we ended up landing. The only thing we had to look at, or well, I not myself, but the administration had to look at was what's in the AFSCME contract, and they took that and worked from there. And then the only other folks that I know of, and I don't exactly know each individual person and what their contribution is, but I know a number of folks who have gone through, we've never had a RIF process in as long as that I know of in the city of Burlington, that have gone through RIF processes, have gone through them from the management end. And so I think that is the context and the lens that was applied. And I don't think that was the right context and lens, but there was a combination of the AFSCME contract and some of that. So anyway.
Thanks, Carter, for sharing your perspective on this. I do have a question about something. I'm sure maybe I misread it, but I think I read it in the news that one of the employees that was let go, had already announced a pending retirement within the next several weeks or months. Is that true? Do you know?
I said earlier, I'm not going to speak to specific employees because it's not appropriate in my role to do so. I think I can speak to, if you, for example, it's my understanding, and again, always open to learning new things. If you have a 401k and you're fully vested or sort of built up those benefits. The actual monetary benefits which you receive would not change in the scenario that you're describing. I do think, again, going back to HR practices, going to a number of folks and really, you know, again, it's part of the approach which we've been talking about, which is let's find early retirements. Let's find early retirements. Let's find you know, there's ways to do it where you go to somebody and you say, hey, I know you're doing this job. The reality is this is the priority in the department. This is the vision. These are the things we're seeing from an operations perspective. How can we work to transition? Do you want to transition to a slightly different role because your expertise here might match up? There also might be, and again, to the granularity is part of what I'm sifting through, and I'm not going to speak to individual employees, but to my mind, the approach ought to be trying to sort of use the existing expertise. And I think I have even though I'm 28 years old, have a profound respect for the idea of institutional knowledge and the importance of that. It's also can be a barrier when you're trying to change things, but I think it's important to preserve when you can. So again, it's weighing, all these decisions are weighed against the whole and not in a vacuum. And so the ones that are harder for me to understand or that I feel my gut reaction to is like, what's going on here? I'm in the process of digging into so that I can get context. Yeah, and it may be that, again, and I'll just say too, it would not be, I had this thought the other day because I've been thinking about this a lot lately and gone through a whole process of processing this information. It's, yeah, I'll just say whatever. I'm belaboring my point, but the mayor, myself, other folks should not, from an ethical perspective, talk about individual folks. And so it's kind of hard to balance that, which I think is an accurate choice or a good way to approach it from the role that I'm sitting in, with some of the folks that I've worked on some of my top priorities with, and who I have a profound, deep respect for, and are good at their jobs. So yeah, anyway, I'll pass to here if somebody else.
I've got a question for the NPA, actually, for the steering committee. Many years ago, Peter Clavell, and I forget the name of his CFO, is Brendan Kelleher, is that correct? Yeah. And both Peter Clavell and Brendan and Bob Kiss and Jonathan Leopold used to come to the NPA and talk about the budget, so that it was a group discussion and they would discuss these things. Moreau would never come to the NPA unless he had some sort of manifesto to impose. And I'm very disappointed that the current mayor has come to the NPA to talk about huge amounts of investment in our infrastructure and bonds that she wants pushed through on election day. But I'm a little bit disappointed that no one comes to the NPA to talk about, well, what does the neighborhood want? What are the neighbors thinking about? Are they thinking about potholes, or are they thinking about what's happening in Gaza? All are important, but there needs to be some sort of dialogue, I think. And we seem to be missing that. I'm not quite sure whether I have a job tomorrow because I'm a city employee.
That's how it feels.
Yes, it does. On a really silly little thing, I work on a street corner in the old North End, and I have never seen a discarded needle at all because the neighbors respect the businesses, shovel and sweep the sidewalks, and keep the intersection clean. Little things at a neighborhood level go a hell of a long way to developing the culture of neighborhoods, villages, towns, cities. We've lost it. We've lost it. Miro wanted to be Trump. And the problems that we have can go back 10 years, 12 years. We're in the situation now that we were in 15 years ago. The school commissioners have bolted, but we were in the same position with the school when Jeannie Collins was the superintendent. And things got really bad before they started to get turned around. And basically they got turned around because the population did something about it. I think when we're talking about what's going to happen, the NPAs going forward, I think we ought to have an NPA meeting totally devoted on what's going to enhance us as a community. Obviously, we need revenues. A couple of days ago, there was a bloke riding his Harley or whatever it was down the sidewalk on Elmwood doing wheelies at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He can do it with impunity. No one's going to stop him. That's wrong. That's part of the culture that we've got at the moment. And you can get away with anything, but you're not building anything either. And that's my little rant. And it's meant to be constructive.
There's a question online, Carter.
Yeah, hit me with it.
It says, it would be good to ask the mayor to account for the process. And then it says, doesn't the city of an EAP contract with Invest EAP, could they have consulted with the city and how to go about this? I don't really understand.
Yeah, I don't totally understand the question, and maybe I'll find out what the acronym is and then go, oh.
So allow.
Is that Lisa?
Yeah, it's me. Invest EAP is an employee assistance program, and they typically offer services to help employers when they're letting go employees, provide support, number one, and they can also offer advice for how to go about it in a humane way. And I used to work for Invest EAP, and the Invest EAP did have a contract with the League of Cities and Towns, and I think with City of Burlington, but my knowledge is based on long ago. So I'm just curious about whether that was utilized.
I don't know, potentially. Something like it was, at least. The other piece, and this is kind of reminded me and brought me back, my brain fog has gone away. The approach for folks who are getting RIF'd, I talked about the sort of parroting union benefits in a RIF situation. The other piece that is sort of related to this is essentially support in resume and trying to find another job, which is provided as folks take us up on it. The other piece too is, and there are some positions that I believe mostly are self-selected, although again, I have not gone through every single one, so that might not be the case. This might not be the case, but that 60-day period, folks are not working because sometimes you'll get rift, and then employers will sort of have folks continue to work. Yes, some folks are, and those have been one-by-one conversations is my understanding, and what the willingness is. Yeah, so that's, I think, I don't know if that, I guess that does answer your question, Lisa.
My suggestion would be, sort of jumping off Richard's comment as well. I was going to be part of that last agenda item, which was, I think there are some really good things happening in this city. We just went through Green Up Day. We have Winterlude. I mean, there's some, and it would be helpful to hear some of that, particularly with an eye towards this summer. You know, I mean, David has just made it, you know, a request that we think about how to recognize and celebrate the folks who've just lost their positions. You know, I think there are things that all of us are aware of that are happening in our neighborhoods, and perhaps there are things that we can share with the NPA as a whole in our minutes or whatever. There are things that we could do over the summer, but I don't want to let Dave's idea drop. And, you know, a couple of other folks have brought up some suggestions as well. So I'm wondering if in the remaining 10 minutes, we could have, you know, some conversation about that.
Because I forgot to talk about brain fog and being exhausted here. I'll say this week, I apologize. I'm off my game a little bit. I've got night meetings until 8 or 9 o'clock every day of the week after work. So I'm a little, I'm less on my cognitive game here. Just to the point, talking about essentially participatory budgeting, bringing in NPAs into the budgeting process. It's something that I talked about when I ran. I think it's a good idea. There's a variety of different ways you could do it and different extents that you could do it to, whether it's binding, advisory. There's a whole number of mechanisms, but I think the NPA being the base of that makes a whole lot of sense because that's the existing system. In the same way that Medicare is not the perfect system, but Medicare for all makes a whole lot of sense because you don't want to create a whole new socialized healthcare system on paper there, although that doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon. But I think it does make a lot of sense. I know that CEO Shad has a lot of buy-in and is very knowledgeable around different examples of participatory budgeting across and is very passionate about that piece. And it goes to Jonathan and I's resolution, which I know we'll talk about next month, but part of that work, I think, is to set the building blocks for MPAs across the city to be successful and thinking about the sort of basics so that we have the ability to, in my hope, and I don't want to speak for Jonathan, but my hope has always been that we have then a base to pursue bringing in MPAs into city government in a more substantial way. Because call me naive, call me idealistic. I'm a big believer in direct democracy and trying to expand that where we can and do that in a practical, effective way. And I think the MPAs present a great opportunity that we ought to build on in the city. So, but to Carol's point, I do think that that's not a bad idea. So I'll turn it over to folks.
I'm just trying to find a practical way to answer you, Dave, and address what Carol said as well. And I think practically, if the NPA were willing, the steering committee could write cards to everybody who lost their jobs and sign it from the NPA. I mean, we could even put it in, on one of our porches, and people could come by and sign them too if they wanted to. But at least that would be. I mean, it's a simple way of acknowledging them the way you're talking, Dave. There's probably better ways to do it. I don't think we want to wait till the next meeting. That's a month from now. It's a long time from now. So if that's something that people think we might want to do, then the steering committee can kind of figure out how to make it happen. We certainly could do that. and bring it to public forum, bring it to city council. We can do that too.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, if there was a way of like brainstorming together about particular details about different people and what they had accomplished, so that instead of saying, we wish you well, and, but really, just, receiving a card that really names something that you've accomplished or something, and that's a huge job to try to pull that together.
Folks, unless there's somebody in the room who knows,
Exactly. And I don't even know if the public has the names of all the people that are being let go. So that's kind of a moot issue. I mean, I think, with the CETO director, certainly there could be some things, but other than that, for example, I don't know.
I agree with that. I was planning on writing some letters anyways. So I'll just draft up for the people I know and my sense of their contributions. I can forward that on to you and you can put that information in the cards. If other people wanted to do the same thing, if you wanted to, forward, write down a few lines about why you appreciated what somebody did for our city, that would be great.
So I think this was mentioned, but isn't it sort of typical that when you've got, a mayor that has been there like 10 or 12 years, when there's a new administration, often there's a big changeover. I mean, my mother-in-law worked in Bridgeport, Connecticut for a mayor. And when that person, she was like, I don't know what she would have been called, but certainly not CEO. She might have been the secretary or something. But so in a way, I mean, this is a horrible thing that happened, but I can see why our mayor has had to do this. And I think that, unless, even a straw vote in this room, do we, instead of wanting to let these people go, do we all want our taxes raised?
That's not the issue.
It isn't?
Are we going to acknowledge?
Oh, no, I'm not talking about each. Oh, totally. I agree. They have done, okay.
Nobody's doing that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate what people have done.
And even people, when administrations change, get that acknowledgement and appreciation when they leave their positions within their own organizations and.
Oh, I see. Because it's a political thing.
That's the way that this was handled. These people who spent, 30, 40 years doing this job are now on the street without any acknowledgement.
Okay. And I only know what I've read in 7 days. Really. I mean, I haven't been to any other meetings, but that's my information. Oh, I'll read it.
I don't know if this would be a public meeting issue to propose that could we gather on this Saturday or this Sunday? It could be at my house where we could, your house too, where we could talk to each other, write cards. The people who know those people can formulate that card and we can contribute to it in different ways. I don't know if that's a problem as far as announcing it as a public meeting, or it's just a gathering of individuals from this community who want to thank the people who lost the job.
I think you've got a great idea there, which is, we could just announce in Front Porch Forum that NPA is collecting stories of, if you know somebody who just recently got riffed, then tell us your story. And we want to collect those stories. That's a great idea. And even, even going further, if we wanted to get together to share those stories, that would be fun.
I think, I don't know the person that was mentioned, but is leaving the Parks Department, and it sounds like people have experience with their kids growing up and, recalling those kind of camp stories, and, that would, I bet, be very, very meaningful.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Call for stories.
Okay.
Sent to, is
So
it an
maybe-
NPA function or?
Okay, so maybe it's the NPA that posts that post,
Right.
and you can come to any of the NPA. steering
If
committee
you're,
posts.
if you're willing to collect those stories and bring forward.
Okay, okay, just want to be sure you don't lose that idea.
No, no. We're off script, so. Is there any other pieces informationally or next steps we want to clarify as a group, I guess?
I just want to either have it confirmed or not by you, Carter. Have the name in the press release that got mentioned, I just looked up and it was just pretty brief in terms of 7 days, for example, but have the names been released of people who will, their jobs will be ending in July? No. So it would only be, so if, I think the front porch forum idea really works in the sense that people who that's happening to will have told their friends. So is that appropriate that then those letters would be sent? So they wouldn't be written about on Front Porch Forum. Okay, so no,
You gotta maintain public privacy.
exactly. So no writing on Front Porch Forum. So sending to, and maybe it would be good to have one of you on the steering committee be the receiver.
That's how I was imagining it.
The only thing I worry about here is there's 26 of them or whatever was the number. And what happens to the ones that nobody knows about or knows their name or knew they, and they get nothing. I mean, that's really a double slap in the face. So maybe it shouldn't be such personal to certain people, but to all those collectively without being too clear about who it is, because otherwise.
We could talk about department by department.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, maybe you could do that. I don't even.
Whoever's receiving it could be a combination, and then we can sort of compile it as our best judgment. You know what I mean? Because it'll just be, I'm just thinking logistically and practically, it'll be difficult to sort of regulate that, for lack of a better term, one way or the other, but yeah.
Thinking that the post in the Front Porch Forum, that's how it starts. We are wanting to appreciate all of the workers who were recently let go. So we start with that so that everybody in the community understands that the NPA had a discussion about this and that what we want to see is there's some acknowledgement and appreciation. And in addition, then we'll have, we're collecting stories. And that's, because we want to try to get some of the appreciation to the people, but we are limited by, who we know. So if the whole community, among the whole community, I bet you everybody's known if the word got out wide enough.
Somebody from HR, look at them and make sure that everybody, we have gotten one for everybody, because I feel like it would be awful if some of them didn't get any.
So what I'm hearing for just next steps is that, and I'm happy to work on this with the steering committee because I don't want to just assign you all work, is FPF post, collection of appreciation for a variety of individuals, departments, generally the work. And then we can figure out a way of, and perhaps going through HR actually makes some good sense, Kathy, to get that information to individuals. Or maybe it's another step after that, but we can maybe figure out what to do from there. Does that make sense?
I mean, I feel like everyone from the city including, has gone through hell. I mean, it's been really hard. The city councilors have gone through it. The employees have gone through it. I think anyone who's working with the city could merit a thank you very much for all of your work. This is something that I've really appreciated that the city provides, or this time that I remember, or this programming. That this is, as a city, these are the things that I love about the city and what I've really appreciated about the employees. And if you've got something that is particular to someone who for sure is left, that's fine. But I think for us to try to do this mixing and matching and try to be sure everyone's covered, I think that's okay. I think we just write our heartfelt thanks, specific details about our experiences with the city.
Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine someone remembering very fondly something that happened 5 years ago and not have the faintest clue what the names of the employees were. But, it was somebody in the rec department or in the street department or something that really came through for them. So it can't really be tied to individuals. It's a team effort, and it's appreciated.
Question here. I'm sorry. Is CEDO still supporting the NPAs?
Yeah.
There they are. There's CEDO right there.
No, I know, but what about tomorrow?
Well, and I encourage folks, there's a presentation similar to all budget presentations throughout the years. And I should have had the bullet points on me, but that sort of goes through specifics. There's about 6 really specific things that sort of were programmatic to the city and that aren't. Core is one of them. Christmas trees is one of them. Recycling is proposed, but we'll see about recycling. There's a I have some time here to work on recycling, and that's what I'm gonna do because I think we can figure that one out for the short term and medium term. But yes, but I also don't want folks to think they're gonna go to City Hall Park and there's never gonna be another event on City Hall Park or Church Street, because that's not sort of the picture I'm trying to communicate as well. So. Any other pieces of information? Yeah.
I just really want to appreciate what just has happened in this room with all of us speaking. It's really wonderful. We're building on each other's ideas. We're calling in questions. We've kind of evolved to a point of love and caring and appreciation of our city and all the things employees do that we may not recognize, and no one's going to get left out that way in terms of not getting a personal letter. And I'm really glad to have been here this last half hour or however long it's taken us. And yeah, so the idea is that appreciations of the work that city employees do get sent to the steering committee. Yeah. 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 Wow.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carter, for jumping in. Thank you, John, for jumping in.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rob, for the food. Thank you, Shawnee and Charlie, very much for making sure that